On First at 9 this Tuesday, the 25th of November 2025. Turbulent weather. Persistent downpours expected to continue through November, with rains intensifying from tomorrow. 10 lives lost due to recent severe weather. Misconduct probe. Recent CID summons of journalists relate to a probe into misconduct by state employees, claims the cabinet spokesperson. Digital transition. Sri Lanka to halt issuance of new analog television channel licenses, targeting a unified digital broadcasting system by 2029. Export surge. Sri Lanka's export sector posts strong growth, surpassing $14.4 billion in revenue in the first 10 months of 2025.
Kalin baby soap rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on Derana News Channel, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. I'm Tatya Aranayake, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story. Now, Cabinet spokesperson Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa says contracts for most development projects are being awarded to the private sector instead of state-owned enterprises to avoid delays and reduce government costs. Speaking at today's cabinet briefing, he commented on the summoning of the editor of the Aruna newspaper before the CID, noting that it was to obtain further information related to the incident covered in the article which recently aroused controversy and to prevent state employees from taking action without government approval.
මාර්ග සංවර්ධන අධිකාරියේ කොන්ත්‍රාත් පිරිනැමීමේදී පෞද්ගලික අංශයට වැඩි ඉඩකඩක් දෙන එක නිරීක්ෂණය වෙනවා. දිගින් දිගටම ඔබතුමාලා මේ විදිහට කොන්ත්‍රාත් දෙන්න ගියාම ජයතන තවදුරටත් අඩපණ වෙනවා.
අපේ ප්‍රතිපත්තිය වෙන්නේ විනිවිදභාවයක් සහිතව.
Our policy is to award contracts through a transparent procurement process. Since it is public money, projects must be carried out at the lowest possible cost. When contracts are awarded directly to SOEs, the costs tend to be higher and projects take longer to be completed. Some projects have dragged on for 12 to 15 years. When this happens, state funds are spent but projects remain incomplete and ultimately the public bears the burden. In the Health Ministry, for example, there are 17 incomplete projects started between 2012 and 2014. If they were completed then, the total cost would have been 29 billion rupees, but now it is 58 billion. Our policy is to fund SOEs separately so they can strengthen themselves and compete in the procurement process like any other bidder.
විපක්ෂ නායකතුමා කියනවා පළාත් සභාව පැවැත්වීම සඳහා පැරණි පනත ගෙන ඒමට සහාය දෙන්නම් කියලා. ඔබතුමාලා මේ පළාත් සභාව සක්‍රිය කිරීමට මෙතෙවර පැවැත්වීමට සූදානමක් නැද්ද?
පළාත් සභාව පැවැත්වීම සඳහා
There's already a law, but delimitation is incomplete. The existing law does not specify how to proceed if delimitation is incomplete. Therefore, a new law is required. We hope to hold elections soon as many development activities need to be carried out through provincial institutions.
ඔබතුමාලාගේ මහලේකම් ටිල්වින් සිල්වා මැතිතුමා මේ එංගලන්තයට ගිය අවස්ථාවේදී ඇති වුණු සිද්ධියක් සම්බන්ධව මේක. ඇත්තටම මේ දේශපාලන ඔබතුමාලාගේ මැතිවරණ කාලයේදී පිටරටවල ඉන්න ඩයස්පෝරාව ඔබතුමාලාට පුළුවන් තරම් සහයෝගයක් ලබා දුන්නා. ඇයි මෙච්චර ඉක්මනින්ම මේ ඩයස්පෝරාව ඔබතුමාලාගෙන් ඈත් වුනේ?
එතන ඒ රැස්වීමට සහභාගී වෙලා හිටියෙත්
It was members of the diaspora who attended that meeting. We do not know whether the group that protested supported us or not. That has not been proven. There are groups linked to the LTT in countries such as Canada and the UK. It appears this may have been their doing. It should not be interpreted as a group that supported us and has now abandoned us.
2022 මද්‍රව්‍ය සම්බන්ධව පනතකින් රජයට පුළුවන්කමක් තියෙන ඒ අත්අඩංගුවට ගත්තාම රජයේ රසය පරීක්ෂක දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවට යොමු කරලා මජිස්ත්‍රාත්වරයෙක් ඉදිරියේ මේක විනාශ කරන්න. ඇයි ඔබතුමාලා මන්දගාමී විදිහට තාමත් මේක ඇදගෙන යන්නේ මේ මද්‍රව්‍ය ටික විනාශ කරන්න නැතුව?
මේ තරම් මත්කුඩු රට තුල තිබෙනවාද කියලා පොඩි ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා ජනතාව අතර.
සකරන දෙයක් නැහැ.
There's nothing suspicious. There are more drugs than we have seized. The Ministry of Justice is taking steps to amend the law so that drugs can be destroyed after preserving the required amount as evidence.
ජනමාධ්‍යවේදී පාලනය සඳහා පොලිසිය යොදා ගන්න ගතියක් පේන්න තියෙනවා. පුවත්පත් කතුවරෙක් CID කැඳවලා තියෙනවා. මේ විදිහට ඇයි මේ පොලිසිය බලපෑම් කරන්නේ මාධ්‍යවේදීන්ට?
මේ එක ප්‍රවෘත්තියක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් තමයි මේක ඇඳවීම කරලා තිබෙන්නේ.
This concerns a report that some Grama Niladaris in Anuradhapura are asking for a certificate from public safety committees. Neither the Ministry of Public Administration nor the Ministry of Public Security has issued a circular authorizing such certificates. This must be investigated as the state is responsible for looking into the conduct of state officials when their actions are inconvenience the public or the government. It is good that journalists expose such incidents. It helps the public.
ගිය සතියේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ නාමල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයා ගැන එතුමාගේ උපාධිය සම්බන්ධයෙන් ප්‍රශ්න කරා. උපකථානායක අශෝක රන්වල මහත්මයාගේ උපාධිය තාම ඒක සත්‍ය උපාධියක්ද නැත්නම් එතුමා බොරුවක්ද කරේ කියන එක තාම සනාථ වුණේ නැහැ. ඇත්තටම අශෝක රන්වල මහත්මයාට උපාධියක් තියනවද නැත්නම් එතුමා තනතුර ලබා ගැනීමේ අරමුණෙන් එතුමා බොරුවක් කරාද කියන එක මට මේලා පැහැදිලි කරන්න පුළුවන්ද?
මං කරේ ඉතින් මෙහෙම චෝදනාවක් නෙවෙයි.
I did not make an accusation. There were reports circulating on social media and websites. I only said that Parliament provides an opportunity for Namal Rajpaksha to clarify the matter and avoid a black mark against him.
අමල් ඉදිරිපත් කරන කන්ද ඔබතුමන්ලා බලාගෙන ඉන්නේ අශෝක රන්වල මහත්මයාගේ උපාධිය ඇත්තද නැද්ද කියන එක කියන්න.
රංගවලකදී රංගවල කරයි, නාමල්දී නාමල් කරන්න.
ඔබේ සම හඳුනාගෙන ඖෂධීය ශාකසාරමේ Forever face wash එකක් භාවිතා කරන්න.
අප වෙනුවෙන් කැපවූ ලංකාවේ අපේ අංක 1 ජාලය ඩයලොග්. දවටනේ නියම මිල සඳහන් ස්විස් ටෙක් නිෂ්පාදන මිලදී ගන්න. ස්විස් ටෙක් ගන්න ඕන හොඳම තීරණය.
The government has decided to halt the issuance of new analog TV licenses as the country moves toward a unified digital broadcasting system by 2029 under a Japan-supported project. Meanwhile, cabinet approval propels Sri Lanka's entry process into RCEP, strengthening future trade diversification through the required accession assessments. With that, here's a look at more cabinet decisions.
Cabinet approval has been granted to suspend the issuance of new licenses for the operation of terrestrial analog television channels in Sri Lanka. The Ministry of Mass Media has initiated the Digital Non-Territorial Television Broadcasting Project this year to implement a single digital terrestrial broadcasting system aimed at providing a high-quality digital experience to television viewers using modern technology. An agreement has been reached between Sri Lanka and the government of Japan for the purpose, and the project is scheduled to be completed in 2029. Cabinet greenlit the decision for Sri Lanka to participate in the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership and the completion of the required accession questionnaire. This move follows Sri Lanka's 2023 letter of intent to join RCEP and the recent issuance of an evaluative questionnaire enabling the country to pursue expanded export diversification and deeper integration into regional supply chains. Cabinet approval has also been granted for the installation of the Norachole-Variapola transmission line and the construction of the Variapola switchyard. Identified as a priority in the long-term transmission plan, the project will channel over 750 megawatts of renewable power from the northwestern region into the national grid, with funding to be sourced from the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The Cabinet also approved the submission of the Finance Commission's recommendations on 2026 provincial budget allocations to Parliament. These recommendations outline the distribution of capital funds and adjustments to recurrent expenditure for all provincial councils. The Cabinet of Ministers granted approval to sign the protocol amending the agreement on the avoidance of double taxation and the prevention of fiscal evasion between Sri Lanka and Luxembourg. Sri Lanka and Luxembourg entered into an agreement to avoid double taxation in January 2013, and both countries are members of the inclusive framework of the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Project, where members are obligated to implement at least the minimum standards of the G20 OECD BEPS action reports. Cabinet approved the signing of an updated bilateral agreement between Sri Lanka and Italy for the mutual recognition of driving licenses. The renewed pact, enhanced with technological and enforcement updates, will allow eligible Sri Lankans in Italy and Italian nationals in Sri Lanka to seamlessly convert their licenses.
President Andra Desanayake today instructed the Minister of Justice to draft new legislation to promptly destroy seized narcotics. He issued this directive during the second session of the National Steering Council of a Nation United National Program to eliminate narcotics.
We have categorized those snapped over drug use from the end of October until the 25th of November. This includes 7 university students, 42 school children, 24 Triforces personnel, 4 police officers, 4 teachers and 2 politicians. 5,671 schoolboys have been apprehended over drug use. As an individual with 12 years experience in the Excise Narcotics Bureau, I have a request for you. If we fail to draft new laws to destroy the narcotics we seize, it is possible that those drugs return to circulation. It is my belief that it is imperative to draft new laws to ensure the swift disposal of seized narcotics.
මේ මහත්මයා කියපු ඒ ඇස්පෙක්ට් එක ගැන අපි බලලා තියෙනවා. ඒ අනුව දැන් අපිට අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා නෛතික ප්‍රතිපාදන සකස් කරන්න. ඒ අනුව අපි කමිටුවක් පත් කරගෙන යනවා. ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් නීතියක් ගේන එක තමයි වඩා සුදුසු.
අපිට කොච්චර කාලයක් යාවිද?
ඉක්මනින් කරන්නට පුළුවන් වෙයි. මොකද අපිට අවශ්‍යතාවය තියෙන නිසා.
අපිට මාස කීයක් යාවිද ඔබතුමිලට අවසන් කළ දෙන්න?
පුළුවන් තරම් අපි මාර්තු වෙනකොට
මාර්තුවට කලින්. දැන් අපි මාර්තු වෙනකොට නීතිය සම්මත කරලා මේක නේද? එහෙම කරමු.
මූස් සහ ෆීනික්ස් නත්තල් ෆියස්ටා නොවැම්බර් 13 සිට 16 දක්වා අනුරාධපුර ස්පොට්නික් ක්‍රීඩා පිටියේදී.
The Government Medical Officers Association has given the government 48 hours to propose viable solutions to challenges confronting doctors and the broader healthcare system. Speaking to the media, GMOA spokesperson Dr. Chamil Vijay Singh warned that should the government fail to comply with the association's demands, the Central Working Committee will convene tomorrow to deliberate on future trade union action.
The Government Medical Officers Association commenced a trade union action in state hospitals on the 17th of November, asserting that the 2026 budget has neglected the pressing concerns of doctors and the healthcare system. During a press briefing in Colombo yesterday, the GMOA announced it would grant the government a 48-hour window to propose solutions for the challenges faced by medical professionals and the broader health sector.
Should the government remain unwilling to address the pressing challenges in the health sector, we may be compelled to initiate trade union action. We have formally requested that an effective mechanism be established within a defined time frame to address our concerns. It is imperative that the government communicate the time they require to tackle these issues, whether it spans months or years, so that the public remains informed. The GMOA Central Working Committee is scheduled to meet next Wednesday, during which deliberations will centre on potential courses of action should the government fail to propose a viable solution. Discussions will also encompass the nature of any trade union initiatives, whether they take the form of a protest or an alternative approach. The government has been granted a 48-hour window to propose solutions to the challenges and concerns currently faced by the health sector.
Now in your weather-related updates, prevailing heavy rainfall across the island is expected to intensify from tomorrow onwards and continue until the end of the month. The Department of Meteorology forecasts heavy rainfall exceeding 150 millilitres across 6 districts. Meanwhile, the Disaster Management Centre announced that recent severe weather has claimed 10 lives so far.
As heavy rains continue to persist around the island, the Department of Meteorology expects rainfall to intensify from tomorrow until the 29th of November. The intensification is attributed to the low-pressure zone above the South Andaman Islands near the southwest Bay of Bengal and the 2 low-pressure zones in close proximity to Sri Lanka. The Met Department notes that the low-pressure zones show signs of transforming into a depression within the next few days, thereby causing an increase in rainfall to the island. Accordingly, heavy rainfall exceeding 150 millimeters is expected in the north, central, eastern, central and southern provinces. The Meteorology Department also forecasts rainfall exceeding 100 millimeters in other areas across the island in the next few days. Strong winds between 50 to 60 kilometers per hour are likely along the sea areas from Pothuwil to Colombo at Trincomalee, and fishing and naval communities are advised to refrain from venturing into sea. The highest rainfall received within the past 24 hours, amounting to 146.1 millimeters, was reported from Akkare Pattu in Ampara. Several waterfalls have reportedly become active due to the heavy rains, while spill gates of several reservoirs have been opened. In the meantime, water levels of rivers Ging and Nilwala as well as Daduroya and Attanugaluoya have risen, inundating surrounding low-lying areas. The Disaster Management Centre reports that adverse weather has resulted in 10 deaths so far.
10 deaths have been reported from the 16th of November until now due to the prevailing inclement weather. Weather forecasts predict an increase in rainfall starting tomorrow. Residents in the vicinity of reservoirs are requested to remain vigilant with the opening of spill gates. We request the general public to contact the hotline 117 to report any incident or obtain disaster management assistance.
In the meantime, efforts to remove rubble and boulders from the landslide site in Ganethana, situated along the Colombo-Kandy main road, continued throughout the day. The landslide, which occurred on the 22nd of November, tragically claimed the lives of 6 individuals. Sandbags were used to set up retaining walls to ensure the safety of residents of surrounding areas due to risks of further collapse. The Colombo-Kandy main road remains closed for traffic. Meanwhile, retaining walls of sandbags are being fixed at the Kadugannava rock tunnel owing to a crack which appeared nearby. In the meantime, a mound of earth collapsed onto the stretch of road between Beragal and Haldumulla along the Badulla-Colombo main road last night. Subsequently, traffic on the Badulla-Colombo main road was limited to a single lane. However, following overnight efforts to remove debris and mounds of earth from the road was completely opened for traffic this morning. Meanwhile, a mound of earth collapsed in Seethalathan, located in Kiravanarama Road in Haldumulla. Taking the persistent heavy rains into consideration, the National Building Research Organization requested the general public to avoid roads prone to landslides, only commuting on them for essential reasons.
Welcome back to First at 9. Now taking you to more local news. Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya stated in Parliament today that the government has not made any statement promising to allocate 6% of GDP for the education sector in its first year in office. She made these remarks during the committee stage debate on budgetary allocations for the Ministry of Education, Higher Education and Vocational Education.
After I presented a fact, I was accused of spreading false information and was told that as the opposition leader, I must stand for the truth. I did not utter a lie, but a truth. The fact that I presented was that when obtaining a police report, a letter from the Public Safety Committee is required. I submit for the Hansard 2 letters addressed to the OIC of Hakmana Police sent by Yasanta Ariyasena, the chairman of the Public Safety Committee.
President set karande epa metana, please.
Do not set a precedence. Pursuant to Standing Order 91, he can raise a point of order but has no right to raise questions on breach of privileges. The fact that he is the opposition leader is irrelevant. We are all MPs and must follow standing orders. This is the notice displayed on the Madara Police notice board. It reads, Public Safety Committee letters are required to obtain a police report. However, after this issue was discussed in Parliament, this line was erased from the notice this morning. Journalists who reported the truth have been summoned to the CID. It is disgraceful.
I value this opportunity to speak in front of the Prime Minister who said 6% of GDP must be allocated for education and 30 others who protested and rallied for education. However, the government who said such things has only allocated 2% of GDP for education. Budgetary allocations for the education sector were discussed today. We must acknowledge that the 7.04 billion rupees allocated for the sector this year is the highest in many years. We never said we will allocate 6% of GDP for the education sector during our first year in government. There are those who engaged with this issue since 2012, and even then we did not ask for the 6% to be allocated at once. We know that it must be backed by policies and strengthening of the institutions. Money alone can't solve the problem.
Promises were made to development officers during elections, but the government has forgotten them after the elections. 16,000 are on the streets because of that. We know that the government is also suffering, but this is your doing. You train them by staging protests demanding jobs for graduates. The government very aggressively states that previous government have not done anything. Let's accept that fact for the time being because we are trying to move forward. Now let's look at the efforts being exerted now. These mysterious and reforms that we have only seen through PowerPoint presentations are highly risky. According to our analysis of the expectations of Generation Z and Gen Alpha, they expect entrepreneurship to be taught through the education system. They do not want a job but to independently earn wealth. Where in these reforms has it been described how these independent children will leave the education system as an adult? We have taken some reforms from foreign countries, but we must understand that all foreign reforms are not suitable for our country. Now the entire school system is in chaos. Prime Minister, unfortunately, is not a product of our free education system. Therefore, she might not have experience in our university system. There is no point in shouting aggressively, but but we must discuss the real issue here. What the minister said yesterday during his English speech is true. The environment to teach with children English has not been created in this system. But did he mention how the issue is being addressed now? Is that module change is taking place? What we request is that these issues not be approached only at the surface level.
මතු පිටින් අරගෙන මේ අධ්‍යාපනය දිහා බලන්න එපා කියලායි අපි අවංකව ඉල්ලා සිටින්නේ.
Welcome back. Now in your business news, Chairman of the Hotel Association of Sri Lanka, Asoka Hettigoda, says that although tourist arrivals have seen an increase, tourism revenue has not increased proportionally. Addressing the 60th annual general meeting of the association yesterday, he called for greater effort to attract more high-end tourists to Sri Lanka.
Though tourist arrivals have seen an increase, it is not reflected in tourism revenue. Though earnings increased by 4.9% in 2025 compared to 2024, this year's revenue figures have gone down by 33% compared to 2018. Honourable Minister, we do not need impressive arrival figures. What we actually need are high-spending tourists. Honourable Minister, we do not merely need impressive arrival figures. What we actually need are high-spending tourists. Generating $8 billion in tourism revenue in 2030 is our target. In my opinion, we can exceed this target through proper management and strategic marketing and infrastructure development. 6 million tourists are expected to arrive in Sri Lanka by 2030. However, what is most important is to increase the daily spending of tourists by 30%. It was stated that although tourist arrivals increased, tourism revenue has not increased proportionally. Fluctuation of exchange rates may have been a cause for this. It was also stated that the average daily spend of tourists was $171. By now, the figure stands at $148. However, this figure does not imply that high-end tourists are not visiting our country. The highest number of tourist arrivals in recent days was recorded from India, followed by the United States, China and Germany. There are 6 European countries among the top 10 source markets. Dollar inflows were increased through an increase in quality. Outstation tourist destinations such as Badul and Bandarawala lack hotel facilities. I request special intervention to establish hotels in such areas. There are tourism board owned lands which could be allocated for the purpose.
Sri Lanka's export sector is gathering momentum, posting strong growth and surpassing $14.4 billion in the first 10 months of 2025. Coconut-based products recorded a historic performance, crossing the $1 billion mark for the first time, while rising service exports and solid performances in key global markets continue to strengthen the country's trade outlook.
The Sri Lanka Export Development Board announced at a press conference today that the country's export earnings have surpassed $14.4 billion in the first 10 months of the year.
Export revenue exceeded $14.4 billion in the first 10 months of this year, marking the first time export revenue exceeded the $14 billion mark. Merchandise exports during this period amounted to $11.373 billion, while export revenue from the service sector surpassed $3 billion. Overall, this represents a 6% increase compared to last year.
Coconut-based products have been standout performers, with the industry surpassing $1 billion in revenue for the first time, fueled by surging demand for products such as coconut oil, milk powder, cream and activated carbon. In October alone, overall exports rose to $1.47 billion, a month-on-month increase despite only a slight rise compared to last year. Services exports, particularly ICT, BPM, logistics and financial services, also strengthened, contributing over $3 billion so far this year. Meanwhile, apparel and tea saw marginal declines in October, while pepper, rubber products, seafood and ornamental fish exports also dipped due to weaker global demand. However, strong gains in food and beverages, electronics, gem and jewellery and processed coconut products helped offset these declines. Key markets such as Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Canada, France, China and the UAE recorded steady growth, while the United States and India showed mixed monthly performances but strong cumulative increases. Exports to the European Union rose sharply, reinforcing Sri Lanka's growing competitiveness in global trade.
Gold prices in Sri Lanka rose notably yet again following a significant rally in global gold prices. The global price of gold saw a sharp increase of $4,150 today. Accordingly, Sri Lankan gold prices increased by 6,000 rupees today compared to yesterday. The price of a 22-carat gold sovereign at the Peta gold market stood at 309,200 rupees, up from 303,600 yesterday. Meanwhile, the price of a 24-carat gold sovereign, which was 330,000 rupees yesterday, rose to 336,000 today. The Colombo bourse closed in positive territory today as a result of price gains in counters such as Selingo Holdings, National Development Bank and Mersta Co. The benchmark ASPI gained 0.77% to close at 22,819.91 points, while the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 increased by 0.44% to end the day at 6,298.75. Market turnover was 4.6 billion rupees. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net sellers, offloading shares worth 213 million rupees. That's all for tonight from First at 9. For the latest developments around the clock, stay in touch with Ada Derana News Channel, the Sri Lankan news brand of international excellence. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.
From across the nation and around the world, this is Sri Lanka's #1 news source, Ada Derana.